Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a treat for you. We will be speaking with a Cajunized American of an Arab and Iranian descent. He is a local from Lafayette, Louisiana, was born in New Iberia. Decided after graduating from college to take a 5-month break. I wish I could do that. And decided to go to the Middle East. He lived in America all his life. And as you know what happened after September 11th and after 2003, Middle East, the Arab world, the Muslim world are words that are common now. It grabs your attention anytime you hear them. Well, my guest, ladies and gentlemen, Hessam Parzivand, he went there, he saw, and he wrote. We will be talking to him about his book, recently published, about the attitudes and the way of life in the Middle East. I've read some of the stuff that he has in the book, and I've read what he wrote while he was over there on his trip. Interesting stuff that I think you will find very, very interesting. It will give you a window on the Middle East from a different perspective. A perspective that probably does not involve wars, disputes. It will involve social. We will tell you how these people live in the Middle East. People that you always thought were probably raising their children to be suicide bombers or terrorists. Well, tonight we will be looking at a different view of the Middle East. What does it mean to a young American who wanted to go and discover his roots in the Middle East? We will be right back after this little break that we'll take, and when we come back, we will be joined with Hessam Parzivand. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. With us tonight is Hessam Parzivand, who was born in New Iberia, wrote a book, very interesting book, and we're going to tell you how to get his book. And we will also welcome your phone calls if you would like to ask him any questions you want. You know, we don't screen our phones or our callers, so you'll be able to ask him anything you want. He went there, he lived there for 5 months and wrote a book about it. Welcome to the show, Hessam. Tell me, why write a book?
Well, I felt that the Middle Eastern perspective needed to be heard. In the media, generally what you see is bloodshed, violence, and you really don't see the people talking about the issues in any logical manner. So that was one of the major motivations to write the book. I guess you could say the seed was planted on 9/11 when the terrorist attacks happened. My heritage became more of a focus to my friends, and they started asking me more questions about the region as a whole. And unfortunately, I found, even though I traveled to the region a number of times, that I couldn't answer their questions on what the Middle Eastern perspective as a whole was on the issues. And that's what eventually motivated me to write the book. In 2006, I found the opportunity to graduate early and travel, and I wanted to get to know my roots. And the second objective was to write this book.
What did you graduate in?
I graduated actually with a degree in management.
Management. Well, I tell you what, this is an excellent book with excellent information in it, especially, you know, coming and being written by somebody who does not have an agenda. Normally, when we see books that speak about the Middle East, normally it's either for or against, and normally the writers will have a particular agenda when they write these books. Now, tell me, what is it that you thought, like before you left there? Were you worried about going there? Were you worried about, you know, everybody saying, "Oh man, are you crazy? You're going to go over there"? I mean, did that play anything in your decision going there or not?
No, I was not. I was not afraid actually at all of going to the region. People did say that, you know, were constantly telling me to be careful, and that did make me a little bit, you know, it gave me a little bit of fear, but not really any amount. I mean, I've been to the region before, and I've never had any problems there. And during the course of writing this book, I never had any problems. I never felt at any point that I was in danger from any particular person. There was only one instance in the entire time that I felt that I might be in danger from a government, and I was doing interviews in Iran, and you know, and that was simply a perception, not necessarily one grounded in fact, but I was being very cautious, obviously.
I'm sure they probably think, you know, I'm sure especially in Iran these days, they're probably more cautious of what people are doing there, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them, you know, taking in consideration what is happening there. You know, talk of war against Iran and all this stuff, so I don't blame them. Now, what is it that you can tell me that mainly people, your friends, who did not have a good perspective on what is going on there, what was the main thing that you thought, wow, you know, I discovered this, now I can go back and tell all my friends that their perception of that particular thing was a misperception. This is what exactly is going on. Because, you know, you were born here, so the culture that you have is here. And going over there to a different culture, even though your parents are from that different culture, but you yourself did not experience that culture. And I'm sure, you know, you hear from your parents, just like I'm trying to raise my kids. But at the same time, there's so much you cannot, it's not like living in that culture. I can't tell you all I want about the culture, but it's not like living. What would be like the main thing that you would say, whoa, now I have something that I can go and tell my friends about?
I mean, the overall message throughout the book, and you know, the overall message that I got while I was in the region is that people in the region want a dialogue with Americans. They want to talk to Americans about the issues. They want Americans to visit their countries and talk to them, and they'd like to visit America and talk to Americans. And I think that was, you know, so many times, you know, it's very tough writing a book. It's a very long process, and so many times I felt discouraged just because of the enormity of the task at hand. But you know, I would go back and listen to those interviews, remember the smiles, the remarks that people gave me, and that was one thing that fueled me to finish the book in the end.
Now tell me, what if you listen to most media, especially talk show in the United States, you would think the Muslims are lining up to come over here and kill Americans, because you hear it all the time. We need to go kill them on their streets before they come and kill us on our streets. What is the perception of America? Now, that's the perception of the Muslim world,
right,
and the Middle East. What is the perception of people in the Middle East of America?
Well, there are two different perceptions. There's one reserved for the United States government, and that obviously is a very negative perception of the U.S. government as a whole. But there's also a perception of the U.S. people, and that perception is that the U.S. people, on a person-to-person level, are very, very friendly people. They're kind, and but the only kind of grievance that many Middle Easterners had about the U.S. people is they feel that they need to know more about the region.
Okay. Tell us more about the region. What did you find out that region is all about?
Well, you know, I think the most important thing that I found out personally was how important history is to understanding the region. At first, whenever I wrote this book, I wanted to just put the attitudes in there and then put some ideas about the implications of those attitudes on U.S. foreign policy. But what I found out during my interviews was that I couldn't understand the attitudes because I didn't know the history behind all these conflicts. And one problem that we have in the U.S. is that everything's about sound bites, and most things get oversimplified.
So people here don't really know anything about that world.
Well, I'm not going to say I don't know anything, but I think that, you know,
historically speaking,
history is definitely a big problem, and the viewpoint of history as it happens, which history as it happens might as well be called news. So those two viewpoints definitely diverge. As history happens, we definitely have differing viewpoints in the Middle East and in the U.S. and past history the same.
Now let me ask you this: did you find that people in the Middle East are also ignorant in how things are in the United States, just like people in the United States were ignorant as far as what is going on in the Middle East about culture, about religion, about or did you find out that people over there really know a lot about here?
Well, you know, the people that I interviewed were definitely a more educated class of people in general. Most of my interviews were conducted in English. I don't speak Arabic, and some were conducted in Farsi. But so I can't really testify to that as much as I'd like to. But one thing that I think is problematic for perception of the United States and the Middle East is our media and the things that it sends over to the Middle East, the horrible talk shows, the reality television, all of that, you know.
Tell me, are they are like American TV shows, these reality shows? Do they show that all, in the Middle East? They see it? Are they popular?
I mean, there are. I'm not exactly talking about reality television as a whole. I'm talking about things like talk shows like Oprah, and you know, you have those "Who's the Father" moments, and I think, you know, it makes American society look more immoral than it is. And then, of course, everything that's on our TV, all of our soap operas and all of that, display immorality. And I don't think that America is an immoral country, you know. But you know, it makes America look very bad, especially when you're.
So why do you think they show these things over there? Is it to make America look bad, or is it to normalize cultures all over the world, so cultures will be like one Western culture?
Well, that's one argument that is made. I asked people whether they thought there was a clash of civilizations, and one argument that some of my interviewees made was that the media is a tool to liberalize Middle Eastern culture and make it more Western.
Did you find that Middle Eastern cultures are more Westernized now? How long has it been since you've been there in that part of the world?
Well, I mean, I go every 3 years on average of my life. Okay. I think Middle Eastern culture, to some extent or another, has become more Western. For example, in the sense of women's rights, definitely, no doubt about it. My mom's generation of women in the country of Qatar, just looking at that little microcosm, my mom's generation of women, very few of them got college diplomas, very few of them were educated. But now the standard is that women go to college. in Qatar. That's the standard.
Right.
You know.
Now, we do have some pictures, and I was not really shocked because I've seen that, but I've seen a lot of American-made products and American franchises there. I mean, like Applebee's and McDonald's and Burger King, and this is like Applebee's, and it's written actually in Arabic. It's funny to see an Applebee's with Arabic writings on it. And Calvin Klein. Now, where did you take this picture at?
That was in the Mall of Emirates in Dubai.
So Calvin Klein jeans. Do they wear Calvin Klein jeans over there?
Well, I mean, Dubai has a pretty diverse population, and I'm sure there are women and men who wear Calvin Klein jeans in Dubai who are of Middle Eastern origin, but also it definitely tailors to the more Western people in that country. But in terms of style, everything that's in style in the West is, to the most part, in style in the Middle East. You have your Louis Vuitton and Prada purses and everything else you can... Oshkosh B'gosh. Everything you can imagine, pretty much.
Now, were you happy to see these things there? Was that a good sign, a positive sign for you? Well, I mean, this is a great mall. Is that a mall?
Yeah, that's the Mall of Emirates. That's correct.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I've seen something like this in Dallas. Probably doesn't even come close to how pretty these buildings. You would think you're not in United Arab Emirates or Qatar. You would think you are in the middle of Beverly Hills.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah, is that in? Where's that at?
That's towers being built in Dubai.
Is that to replace the World Trade Center?
Well, I did have some pictures of what's going to be the tallest building.
They look like the World Trade Center
yes.
buildings. Now, there's also another picture, this one. And we have like 2 or 3 different pictures, so go ahead and put that one, those 2 or 3 different pictures of that structure. No, that same structure, please. This is like... What is this? Is it a hotel or what is it?
Yes, that's one of the world's 9 7-star hotels, and that's in Dubai. It's incredible. It costs almost $100 to get on the island where that hotel is located.
Just to get there?
Just to get on the island.
Well, how much do they charge to sleep in there?
In the thousands. I'm not sure the exact number.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And that's in, did you say that's in Dubai, right?
Yes, that's in Dubai.
Okay. So very much we see... Western-style malls, Western-style hotels. What about the food? Like if you wanted to go to Starbucks or...
Oh, easy. No problem. I went to Starbucks. I had an all-American day one day in Qatar. I think I went to Starbucks, Fuddruckers, Baskin-Robbins, and I forgot what the other restaurant, Pizza Hut probably. And it's incredible. I definitely didn't miss American junk food at all.
It was there. Now, let's talk about that particular aspect of what is happening to the Middle East. Definitely, looking at that, we might say the Middle East is civilized.
Oh, I believe the Middle East is civilized.
But, I mean, would that be... I guess what I'm trying to say here is that what they think civilization is?
I mean, I don't think you have to have an Applebee's or a McDonald's to be a civilized country. I don't think that's like a mandatory requirement. But civilization is culture and people, in my opinion. And I don't think that...
What do you think is going to happen when we have all these, like this is probably the last 10, 15 years that this westernization of the Middle East. And by the way, you see the same thing in Amman, you see it in Beirut, you see it
everywhere.
all over. What about Iran? When you went to Iran, do you see these things in Iran, or it's not westernized?
Well, in Iran, it's very funny. My village, which whenever I was 9 years old, only had a dirt road to it. And, I think got the internet whenever I was 13 or 14 for the first time, and it's still at 25K or something like that, something incredible. But my village right now has 2 hamburger restaurants and a pizza place. And I mean, they're not McDonald's, obviously.
Yeah. But what about the McDonald's and the Burger Kings like we see in Dubai and in the Arab countries?
I don't think they're allowed to be in Iran, for that
Okay,
matter.
so you did not see a McDonald's. You did not see...
No, not in Iran. No.
Yeah, but at the same time, they did have some nice restaurants there?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the...
Nice clothing stores?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, the burger, the burger places, they have
Is
kebab.
the Arab world more civilized than Iran, you think?
Well, you know,
And let me put civilized in between quotations.
Well, no, I wouldn't say civilized. I would say the Arab world, the places that I went to, were more modern, and that's only because of the fact that economically, the countries that I was in performed a lot better over the past few years, other than Egypt.
Now let me. This is the toughest part of the interview, by the way, just to give you a warning. Now in Iran. No, you used the word modern when you saw McDonald's and Burger Kings, but Iran just sent out a satellite up in space, something,
Right.
you know, they entered the forbidden area of westernization, because that technology, after all, is a Western technology. And Iran, a couple of days ago, they entered, and now they are offering their service to any Muslim country who wants to have a satellite in space. You used the word modern when you were talking about these places in the Arab world. Now, in Tehran, did you go to Tehran?
Yes, I did.
Would you say it's a modern city?
I would say it's a modern city, but in terms of new construction and nice buildings and everything else, because the Iranian economy has not developed as well as those in Emirates, Qatar, and Jordan.
Well, but they're using their money to go to space.
Well, they're using their money in a lot of ways in Iran, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and some of them are less good than others.
Okay. The point I'm trying to get at here, because a lot of times when people see that, oh, you have Burger Kings, oh, you have McDonald's, then you're probably okay. You know, that's the image that I hear over and over, that people are worried about the image of the Muslim world, and the closer they get to the image of the Western world, they think they're safe. You know, in my opinion, I think it's politically it's incorrect, because
Right.
I think each civilization and each culture has its own beauty that should be preserved. You know, I'm really,
Without a doubt.
yeah, I'm really, don't want to say saddened. I do want these Arab countries to be modernized, and but civilization, or actually westernization westernization modernization, is, I see, the problem here. Because, you know, you can say, and let me explain to you what I mean by westernization and modernization. You know, westernization is seeing these pictures that we saw.
Right.
That's the West. You go out there on the streets of Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Riyadh or Amman or any of these Arab Muslim states, and you can actually go to Starbucks or McDonald's or Burger King or anything.
Right.
But I don't see any modernization in the sense of modernization. Modernization to me is you come to the modern age of everything, technology, everything.
Well,
what's the problem with technology? Why these Arab states can't? Did you talk about that in your book?
I did not, you know, but it was interesting that whenever I asked about westernization and I asked about what were the positive elements of westernization, people immediately said technology was the positive elements.
What, making a hamburger in 5 seconds?
No.
What technology?
No, technology in the sense that, you know, the technologies that have been spread to the Middle East, that have proliferated, the internet, better business methods, you know, and everything else, you know. But they said that technology was, you know, the thing. They're not going to sit there. One imam said to me, he said, I'm not going to sit there and say that Qatar has the best technology in the world and not accept the West's technology. I'm going to go ahead and take Western technology, and where I believe that our customs, our culture is better, I'm gonna go with our culture and customs, and not, you know, and stick with my customs and not westernize.
Now, you mentioned the internet and computers and all that. Did you feel like your friends, the youth that you spoke with, and your relatives and stuff, do you think they are using this technology the right way, or you felt, whoa?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question, because the internet can be used in many ways. It can be used.
Right, but what most of the younger people there.
Well, I mean, I would say that younger people in the U.S. and in the Middle East share a common thing in the fact that they use the internet mainly for communication with their friends, use a lot of instant messaging programs, and is
it creating a problem there?
I mean, it creates a problem wherever it is.
But in particular, because the internet is designed by an open society. Did you feel that there is? Wait a minute, there's two different lives here, because the internet is an open format, which the society is also an open format. But over there, it's an open format in the internet and closed format in real life. Did you notice that? Was that a problem?
I didn't notice that as a problem. I was in more, with the exception of Iran and Egypt, I was in more liberal states for most of my time, and I never noticed any problems with society being closed as a whole. I mean, in Iran, it's obvious in the sense that you watch what you say in front of certain people. But besides, in Egypt, I didn't have enough. Well, I heard about it, but I didn't personally witness, I guess you could say.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking with Hessam Parzivand, who is a Cajun by birth, and actually was born in New Iberia, Louisiana, to an Iranian and an Arabic parent. And we are talking about his new book. He took 5 months after graduating from college, and he wrote a book about it. He went to the Middle East. He visited Iran. He visited Dubai, Qatar. He visited Abu Dhabi. He visited Egypt. And where else did you go?
Jordan. Jordan's the one you missed.
And visited Jordan. Well, I'll tell you what. If anyone would like to call us and talk to the author of this book, you're welcome. We're going to put the phone number right there. And now we're going to go to the phones with Liberty, who's waiting patiently to speak with Hessam.
All good things are worth waiting for.
There you go.
I want to congratulate you guys. And first question, who is his publisher?
The publisher is booklocker.com.
Okay. Secondly, welcome home.
Thank you so much.
In '68, I had a first cousin that was born in Tehran under the dictator tyrannical Shah, and of course they were oil and gas, and indeed nothing compared to what it is today. Of course, 4 decades ago. But my question to you is, number one, the social class, that those within the party in the halls of higher education, as opposed to the villagers. Could you give a percentage in regards to that? Number two, the rolling blackouts, the hardships in the markets, and their inability to refine their crude oil for their own energy and domestic policy. And number three, the military-industrial complex and how much they are forced with their gross national products, with their monies, to set up in a defensive mode.
Okay, what was the first question on social classes? The
hardships, and if it's a hierarchy in regards to those within the party, the wealthy, as opposed to the villagers and their access to higher ed.
Access to higher education in Iran is dictated by performance on a particular test. It's kind of like the SAT, and in terms of that, we have. I don't think there's any differential in terms of. I mean, there's differential just like there is in the United States as to classes and what opportunities for higher education. Obviously, if I'm a poor person from Lafayette, let's say, and I cannot and I can only go to the University of Louisiana Lafayette because that's all my parents can afford, and then I want to go on to law school like I have currently, that might be a strike against me in terms of going to law school that I went to the University of Louisiana at Lafayette as opposed to Harvard or, Cornell. So
Stepping stones are similar in Iran as they are in America.
Yeah, and in terms of, I don't see any extreme differential. The higher classes have always had a better opportunity at education in the United States and in Iran, and I would say in practically any country. And I personally have not witnessed that the opportunities are that much worse. I don't know. I've never looked into the fact of whether they have a student loan program or TOPS is very unique in this state and allows pretty much everybody to go to college. But whether they have student loan programs or things like that, I've never looked into that, and that could be problematic if they do not have such a thing in Iran.
That's most unfortunate, but it's on the radar that Governor Jindal will be pulling the TOPS program, which is no surprise to me, being he's in the OCON.
That is very unfortunate. The TOPS program is what gave me my undergraduate education, and I think it's a vital program to the state. Although initially I would say that the standards were a little low to get it, but I think that at this point they've put the ACT scores and the GPA in the right place.
Well, congratulations. Can you elaborate on the infrastructure in regards to the rolling blackouts and the markets? And
I never saw. Well, my village used to have some problems with electricity in the past. I never. The last time I went there, we never had a problem with a blackout while I was there. There were no blackouts in Shiraz or Tehran while I was there. But the Iranian electrical grid, in my experience, is not quite as reliable as the American electrical grid.
Do you feel it's antiquated and they do have a just cause for alternative energy? With their booming population?
Do they have a just cause?
They're a sovereign nation amongst itself. So.
Right. It's a trade-off situation. If they could successfully use nuclear energy, they would save themselves some natural gas or some of their petroleum reserves. And, that is a potential argument. Is that their motivation? I'm trying to present the attitudes of the Middle Eastern people and not my own perspective on that issue. And you can find that in the book.
How do they look at what Iran is doing? How do the other Arab stay with us, Liberty? How do Arab people? I know how the media tries to make Iranians' pursuit of nuclear energy as something that is a taboo. They can't do it. But how do other people look at what Iran is doing?
That was a very interesting question. One of the most interesting questions that I asked of my interviewees. And to a great extent, many of my interviewees, especially those in everybody in the Arab world, found that, not everybody, but many people in the Arab world felt that Iran should pursue nuclear energy, should have that right. And, no matter what, there is a double standard. The U.S. can pursue nuclear energy, it can have nuclear weapons. Why can't Iran? That's the argument that they generally made. And everything that I say during the course of this interview is going to be based on the perspectives of the people, because that is what I'm trying to present through my book and through this interview, not my own perspective.
To wrap it up, I'm going to give you a compliment here, and I'm going to close with a question. I'll hang up.
Right.
And I look forward to having you springboard into our local politics and eventually ascend to Washington, D.C., and not on K Street, please, sir.
Well, he will be
God willing.
Senator Hessam Parzivand.
Yeah, thank you. Not on K Street, okay. But what is the percentage that they utilize for their military-industrial complex is what's come to know. I look forward to reading your book, and you're a breath of fresh air, and I thank you so very much. Thank you, Dr. Tawala.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do not have the exact numbers on the percentage that they do use for the military-industrial complex, and I would assume that the only people who do actually have those numbers are probably in the U.S. intelligence community. I don't think those are numbers that are openly released to the public. That's my guess.
Well, actually, you might be right. We probably will never know the exact figure how much they're spending, but they are spending a lot on
without a doubt
on military. Even small states, like Qatar and Dubai, and they spend a lot of money on Bahrain. Just signed a huge deal with the French, I think, and I think Qatar also signed something. Oman did the same thing. What is their greatest fear in that area? Do you think people think that there might be a big war in the Middle East? Like over here, people are saying, well, we're going to be in there for a while. Do you think people in the Middle East think that it's going to stop at Iraq, or they think it's going to burn everything in its way?
I think that the attitudes have probably changed a bit with the Iraqi insurgency and the conditions in Iraq, and also Hezbollah's semi-defeat of Israel, for a lack of a better word. Those two events have caused people to believe that the U.S. May not hold as much power as they used to think. That's my understanding from the book, or well, from my research from the book.
From the people. So the people think there are other powers that are stepping in, or?
Well, there was. I asked one particular interviewee's opinion comes to mind, and she hoped that Iran would be the power that would step in. And there are a lot of people who would prefer Iran to not control, but be kind of the leader of the region rather than the United States.
Did you find some worries, like on the other side of the Gulf from Iran, that some of these states, like for instance, the United Arab Emirates, or are they concerned about this Iranian increase in, don't want to call it control, but let's say the impression that the media is trying to put out there that Iran wants to be a regional power there?
Well,
are the people concerned about that?
There are. There's a split kind of among the Middle Eastern population. There are those who believe that Iranian leadership of the region would be better than American leadership of the region, and they see the two as substitutable, and therefore they are for Iran. And there are those who believe that Iran would perpetuate a Shiite-Sunni war or do any number of horrible things to the region, and that the status quo is better.
Who's winning?
Who's winning? I think I argue throughout the book that because of the fact that Iran has successfully won hearts and minds throughout the region, that Iran is currently in a much better position than the United States, and that is very, in my opinion, that's very unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, probably. What the United States is, this book is more social, more attitude than politics, but I think the United States have tried, and with conjunction with Israel, as a matter of fact, to create this impression that Iran wants to be a power, a regional power, and they try to create this fear and concern with other Arab governments. So, in a way where the Israelis and some other Arab governments will find themselves in the same camp against Iran. But you're telling me that plan is not really succeeding too well on the street.
Well, that plan is not succeeding, and I think the U.S. is not succeeding in the region because, this is my argument throughout the book, is that military might has not proven to be enough for the United States and Iraq, and it has not proven to be enough for Israel and its attack on Lebanon.
What do you think the United States should do?
I think the United States should try to actively engage with the Middle Eastern people as a whole, try to create a dialogue, and I think that Petraeus is the best example of how the U.S. can succeed in the region. Petraeus and his actions in Iraq. You know, you had the Sunnis who essentially allied against al-Qaeda, who at first allied with al-Qaeda against the United States. And then they chose to ally with the United States, but at that point it was only because, you know, they hated al-Qaeda more. They still hated the United States.
Plus the millions of dollars that the United States spent on these sheikhs too has a lot to play with that decision. Now, the United States has an agenda, and that agenda, in order for it to be changed, there has to be change right here in the United States by the people, because the government has their own agenda, and you know, for the government to reverse their agenda is not going to be very easy. So, you know, we can't sit here and say that, the United States should do this in order to make things, you know, everybody can live happily ever after. But we don't see that happening. What do you think should be here in the United States? That way we can change the government's agenda on the Middle East. What do you think people in the United States needs to do?
To change the government's agenda?
Yeah.
That's a tough question, let's say. The government, I mean, people need to be better educated on the issues and need to be more vocal about the government's foreign policies. Right now, the problem that we have in the United States is you have lobbyists for certain groups. You know,
That's what I'm talking about, the agenda. That's exactly what I mean by the agenda.
But we have to be able to, as the people, you know, you have, let's say, the lobbyists for Armenia who successfully got that resolution passed that there was an Armenian genocide. And that caused a lot of problems for the United States. And it proves that, you know, what American cares about Armenia that much, you know, but Armenians care about Armenia and U.S. relations with Armenia, and that is controlling our foreign policy and controlling our foreign policy outside of our interests. So if Americans were more aware of what's going on in terms of foreign policy and could kind of shout down these groups that are trying to control U.S. foreign policy outside of its interests, I think we would be more successful. The same thing can be found in Cuba, our relations with Cuba.
So what you're saying is the responsibility is more on the Muslims in America to advocate their interests.
Well, I think the problem with U.S. foreign policy is that everybody advocates, all the lobbyists advocate their interests. You know, they advocate that there was a genocide in Armenia, or they advocate that we shouldn't trade with Cuba. But
there's no lobbying, there's no Muslim lobbying interest.
No. I think the problem is that, you know, there's nobody to counter nobody cares enough about Cuba-U.S. policy to counter Cubans who care so much about Cuba-U.S. policy. Nobody cares about Armenia-U.S. policy to counter Armenians who care so much about that issue. And as a result, these groups have kind of monopolized their particular issue. And I do believe that, you know, I think what you're trying to get to is the next point, that Muslims in our society have not succeeded as much at lobbying.
Okay. That's what I was getting at. I'm not sure why people are calling this extension, but somebody's dialing the wrong extension. Anyhow, so you wrote the book, and how has been the reception from the people who read the book?
I'm very happy with the reception that my book has received. Americans seem to like the book thus far. Those who've flipped through a few pages, and my mother's beauty salon, seem to think that it's very sweet and to the point on the issues that affect the region. And I'm very excited with the response that I've gotten to the book, which has been, to the most part, positive.
Okay. That's not a website there. That does not look like a website. No. So let's go ahead and put a dot. Do you have a .com?
Yeah, it's HessamP.com is the website.
And your email address is HessamP
at Gmail.
At Gmail. Okay. Take that off. I just noticed that, and it does not look like a website. So let's put his correct website there, and again, the book is Winning Middle Eastern Hearts and Mind. Tell me about the title, Winning Middle Eastern Hearts and Mind. How are we going to do that?
Well,
I mean, to name it, I'm thinking that I'm going to read in there like a prescription of how to win Middle Eastern hearts and mind.
Right. The key to winning the hearts and minds of anybody, for that matter, is understanding the person. And whenever you're trying to win the hearts and minds of an entire society or an entire region, you have to understand the people. And that's why I started out with the history of the region, so you can understand where the grievances come from. And then I moved on to the attitudes that the region faces. In terms of an actual prescription, I think that there is no real prescription that I can give without being able to predict future events. So.
Okay, very good. Let's go back to the phones with Jimmy on one. Jimmy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you're on.
Okay, I just had a comment to Hessam.
Okay.
He was talking earlier about different places in the Middle East and the different franchises that he saw located over there. The food franchises like the Burger Kings, all the other ones that he names. I mean, don't forget, that's terrible food.
It is horrible, and I think the Middle East is having an obesity problem because of Westernization to some extent or another.
Yeah. Well, another thing, I lived in a Central American country for a long time, and this is a completely cultureless country here, so it doesn't really matter what they do. But when you take a small country like Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and start putting those franchises over there, I mean, little by little, you ruin the culture. I mean, they're not Spanish names; they're English names, English words, and again, like I say, the food is terrible, man. So yeah, you'll see some obese people sooner or later. I mean, look at this country. But
you know what, Jimmy, you're bringing up an excellent point that these places had culture that dates back thousands of years, and what's wrong with Falafel King instead of Burger King?
Well, I mean, I was in Guatemala, lived there for a long time, and there was a guy last year I was over there, and he said he was going to the car wash. Now that's how he said car wash.
Yeah.
Now car wash in Spanish is lavacarro. Okay, I mean when you start you change enough. And eventually you start losing the culture. Look at the American Indians over here and the languages that were lost. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in New Mexico and Arizona and Utah, and I tell you, it's a joke to call these people Indian. I mean, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
It's the white man's fault, let's face it.
Yeah.
They ruined it. And once those languages are gone, just like when the culture's gone in Guatemala, and it's gone for good. But I just want to make that comment.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Okay, man.
Thank you. Let's go to John on 2. John?
Okay, man. Thank you.
Turn down your TV, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Talafi. Hessam, if I take an unfair advantage, I have a wonderful love of your country, especially your ancient culture. And I was just reading, I thought you would be delighted to hear this. I was just reading last night, as luck would have it, so I certainly didn't anticipate I'd be seeing you, a learned treatise about the program of Cyrus the Great. He's the only one that the Jews called the Great Messiah, do you know that much about your illustrious history?
Yes, I do. I've done a number of reports in high school and college on on the Persian Empire, and I have learned a great deal about our history, although probably I'm a little more well-versed in our history since 1912 rather than our ancient history.
I might add, as I'm sure you're aware, you are an Indo-European language, like Sanskrit, like German, like Latin, like Greek, like Hittite. I think you know that, don't you? Old Persian's Indo-European. So you're one of us. They always want to think you're Semitic. And then there was something that Cyrus the Great said. He was so proud. He was the 9th Persian king of the Persian Empire. And I'm quoting directly from his Monument to Inscriptions. But he made a mistake. He made a very interesting observation before he acquired his kingship and his enthronement. He said there are 3 things that hurt a people. It is foreign invasion, it is famine, and it is a lie. And of course, what I want to zone in on is that lie. We went into Iraq on a lie. We know that every society has foundational ideals. And it's my pleasure to tell a very attractive young Persian gentleman, your society is based on truth and on moral purity. That's why zeal can get out of hand with suicide bombers.
Very good.
Because you don't want to mess with the Persian mind. They take
very good,
moral purity
John.
Very seriously.
John, thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, let's go to Peter on 1. We're running out of time. Let's try to catch some people. Okay, Peter.
Yes, sir. I was wondering if Hessam, did he go to Iraq?
No, I did not have the chance to go to Iraq. Iraq is a bit dangerous, and I tried to avoid the more dangerous places. But I did interview a number of Iraqis who had recently came from Iraq and were in other countries, Jordan and Qatar, most notably.
One other question is the current boundaries of countries in the Middle East as a result of the European
line drawing.
Line drawing post-World War I.
That's correct, and I addressed that in my history.
Do you see any sense in your interviews and your travels that there are any movements or any feelings towards, for instance, there's been a move towards Iraq becoming one Kurdish state.
30 seconds.
Perhaps 2 other Kurdish states, or rather 2 other states. Do you get any sense of that?
Well, you know, the Iraqis that I talked to were all about unity, and many of them would not even reveal to me whether they were Sunni or Shia, because they said that this does not matter in Iraq, and this does not matter as a whole. So I did not get a sense of any major divisions. One thing, though, is I did not get to interview any Kurds. So I would assume, had I interviewed some Kurds, there would be a higher possibility of that.
Did you notice in the areas where you went any animosity between the Sunnis and the Shias?
You know, there's a lot of fear about the Sunni-Shia divide. And one question that I did not ask that I wish I would have asked was a question regarding the Sunni-Shia divide. But there's definitely a lot of fear. A lot of people in the region are saying that Shia Muslims are kind of appearing out of nowhere, that there's a lot of conversion to Shiaism, and a lot of Sunnis are worried about that. And you know, that's one factor that makes Iranian leadership of the region unpalatable to many.
Very good, Peter. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Peter.
All right. Well, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. And let's see. Let's go ahead and put the where people can get the book, Winning Middle Eastern Hearts and Mind, An Understanding of Regional Issues and the People's Perspective by Hessam Parzivand is the book that we're talking about in this past hour, ladies and gentlemen. Go get the book. It's pretty good if you want to know more about the attitude, not of the politicians in the Middle East, but actually of the people in the Middle East. And that's what Hessam actually has done in his book. There are some few pictures that you will see, but also you can. Did you have on your website? You also have some pictures on the website.
Yes, I do have some pictures on the website. It's only a few. I'd like to also note that the book's available at the typical online book retailers like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and
now,
Target.
is it available at Barnes and Noble locally, or do you have to order it?
Barnes and Noble in Lafayette does have the book in stock at the moment.
Very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all we can say is we bring them to you, and you decide what you think about what they say. And as a matter of fact, this is really a fresh perspective about the Middle East, and I can tell you, it's westernized. You know, they have Burger Kings and McDonald's more than you do have here, and if that says anything, I don't know. I kind of tend to agree with John, I believe it was, who said that kind of takes away from the culture, and I think the culture is so rich that it can do a lot on its own. Well, thank you very much.